Feudal China, starting in 221 BC and ending in 1912, lasted for 2,132 years. This long and turbulent time witnessed the rise and fall of 83 dynasties and hundreds of emperors. Strictly speaking, since the first feudal emperor Shi Huang Yingzheng of the Qin dynasty until the last emperor of the Qing dynasty, Ai-Xing-Guo Puyi, who was forced to abdicate. Even historians can't tell how many emperors have existed between them. They are like stars that complement each other and form the most magnificent sky of ancient China. Here, we have compiled 345 rulers who are generally recognized as emperors. Now let's travel back to this long time and look at their life resumes together. Although China's feudal society has as many as 83 regimes from Qin to Qing, according to the historical point of view, they are generally classified into 16 major historical stages. Now we regard a square or a fan as an emperor. For example, if a stable dynasty has 9 emperors, we will fill this dynasty with 9 squares. However, if this dynasty is not stable enough, one or more self-claimed emperors could mushroom to establish their own kingdoms. Like this, 2 local emperors squeeze in. There may be a father and a son, because they are next to each other. Now, this dynasty is facing a crisis. Moreover, if another emperor from a different kingdom rush in together, the case could be more complex. We can see the dynasty is getting more and more chaotic. Now let's move back to China's first feudal dynasty from 221 BC. There were 3 extremely turbulent times in feudal China: the 5 Hu and 16 kingdoms, the Southern and Northern dynasties, and the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms. At the same time, there were also the period with the highest density of emperors, with 50, 59, and 37 in each. In addition, we can see the restless disrupt regimes disturbing any stable dynasty. Actually, no dynasty can survive from disturbance, nor their masters. Just as every dynasty has a specific name, every emperor also has his own name. But externally, they maintain a highly unified caliber. For fear of breaking the taboo, all their citizens can only call them Huangshang, Shengshang, Wansuiye, Tianzi, Zhenlong, and Kehan, which are all beautiful words. Correspondingly, the emperors usually call themselves Zhen, Gu, Gua, Yu Yiren, and Bugu. Most of their meaning is a humble brag as loneliness, in order to demonstrate their supreme authority. And their real names might only be called by their father. So, what are their names? Everyone's name interests their parents' best wishes to their children, and the emperors of China do the same. Opening the roster of Chinese emperors, if we take the most distinctive character in each emperor's given name to compose a prose, this is probably the most beautiful article in Chinese. If you want to have a beautiful Chinese given name, please find the word you like here. You may find that some emperors have the same name. Well, leave this question to you. Please tell me which Chinese character is the most popular in the moment. although the emperor is revered as the imperial dragon in China. Few royal parents express this symbol straightforwardly. Just like your parents won't give you names such as God. Actually, Chinese parents didn't dare to use such a given name with dragon or royalty. If there was another existing emperor sitting far away, it would cause a death penalty. But apart from these two above, their given names are very straightforward, one with the emperor and the other with the dragon. Therefore, several Chinese parents are smart to think out a compromise, such as finding a homophonic character, long. Actually, these given names can also reflect ancient Chinese beliefs. Just as the emperor was honored as the son of the heaven, many given names with the character Ri were chosen by their parents to express their children's bright future. At the same time, Chinese people prefer jade to gold and silver. So many emperors put the word jade into their children's given name to express their noble characters. In the final analysis, this belief is rooted in Chinese ancient five elements doctrine. The ancient Chinese believed that gold, wood, water, fire, and earth constituted everything in the world and entrusted corresponding characteristics. Just as gold represents toughness, similarly wood to tolerance, water to accessibility, fire to vitality, and earth to loyalty. The emperor's roster is not so much an article, it is a portrait of the world. Unlike given names, the emperor's surnames were inherited from their parents and depended largely on their ethnicity. Among the Han surnames of ancient Chinese emperors, Liu, Li, Zhu, and Zhao are the four major ones, and the total number of emperors is as many as 134. Moreover, by comparing the population of Chinese surnames in 2021, although the population of Wang came to the top of the list, the population of the four major imperial surnames is still dynamic. However, it is regrettable that most of the surnames of non-Han emperors have now been passed down, except for the Qing dynasty's Aixing Girl. There are still 320,000 people, but the rest are less than 1,000. Most of the descendants of these emperors have been Chinesized. So let's talk more about the emperor's nationalities. In addition to Han, there are another 12 nationalities. They are Di, Xiongnu, Jie, Xianbei, Goguryeo, Qiang, Shatou, Khitan, Jurchen, Tangut, Mongols, and Manchu. If we use a red dot to represent a Chinese emperor, we can see the ethnic distribution of them. Of course, the Han emperors did their part, and the number reached 215. However, similar to surnames, other ancient imperial nations either withdrew from China or merged into Han or other nations, and they finally disappeared in Chinese history. Here, we use a smaller white dot to represent 100,000 people. Such a grade is nearly equivalent to the British population. By comparing the population of Chinese ethnic groups in 2018, only 3 of them can be followed. The Qiang people is only about 300,000. The Mongols in the Yuan dynasty and Manchus in the Qing dynasty still have millions of people. But compared with the vast Han people today, they can only be cited as a drop in the ocean. Therefore, we objectively call them ethnic minorities here. These non-Han emperors especially the founding fathers, are brave and good at fighting, and their writing skills are first-rate, which stems from their way of life, nomadism. However, most of them are called the barbarian by the Han emperors. In their eyes, these rude people are always only worthy of being knights, rather than kings. But in the eyes of the world today, many non-Han emperors are even more famous. Genghis Khan once established a huge Mongol empire, and his grandson, Kublai Khan, built the capital of the Yuan dynasty, Beijing, which set the base of its political position as the capital of modern China. In addition, Kangxi, Yongzheng, and Qianlong, three Manchus, brought feudal China to its final climax. After Beijing becoming the capital, many later emperors were born there since then. So, where are the emperors of China born? The birthplace of Chinese emperor is called the Dragon Origin Land. As the origin of the Chinese civilization, the Central Plain area of the Yellow River Basin bears the memories of the homeland of many early emperors. Therefore, the Yellow River is also called the Emperor's Dragon Vein, and in this pink area of Central Plains, at least 67 emperors were born. The four famous ancient capitals of China, Luoyang, Xi'an, Beijing, and Nanjing, are also located or surrounded here. A total of 95 emperors were born and nurtured in these capital cities. Of course, there are also some cradles of emperors far away from the Central Plains. Among these places, the northernmost and the westernmost can reach the outer mountains at the border of China and Mongolia. The easternmost can penetrate into the hinterland of Daxing in northeastern China. The southernmost can cross the Nanling Mountains of China to reach the current international cities of Guangzhou and Fuzhou. Moreover, many emperors of the Yuan dynasty were born outside of modern China, the Mongolian Mobile grassland. If these places are connected together, we will construct the approximate range of Chinese emperors' birthplaces. Now we take the pink central plain as the central block of the grid. The middle line is the Yellow River, and four sides and four corners are the 8 directions relative to the central plains, and the squares floating on the border as a case of being born abroad. For example, Shi Huang Yingzheng was born in Handan, which is Central Plain city. Therefore, his block doesn't need to move. Whereas his son, Shi Yinghuhai, was born in Xianyang, which became the capital of Dynasty Qin 9 years after Huhai's birth. It is a western city to the Central Plains. Hence, we need to drag his block to the left. For another example, Yuan Hong, also known as Emperor Xiaowen, migrated the capital of his northern Wei dynasty from his birthplace Datong south to Luoyang. This migration is a milestone that Han nation started to merge with the northern nomads from the 5th century. Here, we need to lift up Xiaowen's block back to north. In addition, Kublai Khan, the famous Yuan emperor we just mentioned, was born in Mongolian Mobile grassland. So his block is a little special. We need to push it north to the top boundary of his grid. Take one last example. Dynasty Ming's 3rd emperor Zhu Di, who is famous for his era name, Emperor Yongle, migrated China's capital from Nanjing back to Beijing. This action has kept Beijing as China's political center for another 500 years, till Qing's ruin in 1912. Therefore, Emperor Yongle was actually born in Nanjing, which is relatively southeast towards the Central Plains. Let's move his block to this corner. Now we can see the relative position of each emperor's birth compared with the Central Plains. On the left, we summarize the number of emperors born in the 4 Asian capitals in each row over time. we can clearly see the northward migration of China's political power center, from the Central Plains to Beijing. As the dragon wing and the son of the heaven mentioned just now, they are both symbols of males. Therefore, is there a female emperor in China? In Chinese culture, the dragon phoenix totem is the most common gender symbol. Among the emperors of China, there are countless dragons, but only one phoenix. It's again time again. In order to reduce the difficulty, you don't need to find the phoenix in the dragons, but you still need to find the Venus in Marses. Can you find the only female emperor in 15 seconds? There she is. Wu Zetian is the only admitted female emperor in Chinese official history. She founded Wuzhou and divided the prosperous Tang Dynasty into two sections. In fact, there are not a few women in power in Chinese history. They are without exception the wives, mothers, and even grandmothers of the emperors. This form of their governance is called women behind the curtains in Chinese history. But they dare not eat the first cancer to justify themselves, except Wu, the only female who stepped out of the curtain finally. From the chart on the right, we can see the age at which the emperors in front of the curtains were enthroned. Except for 3 elder emperors, the remaining 27 were all minors. Besides, 5 of these regents controlled more than one emperor. One of the most famous is the Empress Dowager Cixi of the Qing dynasty. She controlled the second and third emperors from the bottom of the feudal China and crushed the last straw. She compared herself to the Queen Victoria of her time. But at best, she pulled the curtain aside, not yet stepping out. Wu Zetian's charm is not only that she is the only female emperor in China, but also that she is the concubine of 2 emperors. In other words, she has 2 husbands. So how many wives do those male emperors have? And how many children did they give birth to them? In ancient China, poets usually use flowers to describe females in order to complement their elegant faces and fragrant hearts. Here, we compare one flower to one emperor's imperial harem, and petals to their concubine numbers. According to historical research, excluding those emperors who have no historical records, each emperor shares an average of 6.7 concubines. A Tang Dynasty poet once described Li Longji, another famous Tang emperor, as having 3,000 concubines. But only 33 people are officially recorded. So according to historical facts, the emperors with the most wives are still from Kangxi and Qianlong of the Qing dynasty, 41 and 42 individually. After the emperor's concubines, let's move to their children. If we use the blue dot to represent a boy and the pink one for a girl, we can see the number distribution of their offsprings. The fact is that more wives do not necessarily have more children. The Chinese emperor gave birth to 1,748 boys and 880 girls in these 2,000 years, and there are just about twice as many boys as girls. Why is it so? This might be due to the feudal hereditary system. Boys born by the emperors may need to inherit the throne in the future, so every prince is carefully recorded. But the princess's political mission is not that heavy, so this part of the historical record is blurred. The emperor with the most descendants is Zhao Ji of the Song dynasty. He gave birth to 38 princes and 42 princesses. Even though he was captured in the remote Jin kingdom in the final stage of his life, he still gave birth to 6 sons and 6 daughters. It can be said that he had regarded giving birth as a habit of drinking coffee and reading the newspaper every morning. From the chart on the left, we can also see that the number of children belonging to Zhao Ji is high. But for emperors, sometimes hurrying to have a baby is not just about the joy of life. One of the most important reasons for their reproduction is that they wanted to guarantee their own children as the heir to the throne before they die, so as to ensure that their dynasty can run like a perpetual motion machine. Because these emperors clearly knew that their lifespan would end at any time. Although the Chinese emperors always believed in immortality, it was counterproductive, and their average life expectancy was only 38 years. We use the sidelines of one grid to calculate the emperor's lifespan. If we count the border of a grid as 100 years old, then the square in each grid right now is their average lifespan. Now we look at the changes. We can faintly see that as time goes by, the overall lifespan of the emperors has slowly increased. The emperor with the shortest lifespan was Liu Long of the Han Dynasty. He succeeded to the throne 4 months after he was born, and died at the age of 1. According to legend, the emperor with the longest lifespan was Zhao Tu of the South Yue Kingdom in the early Han Dynasty. He lived 103 years old. However, since he was born before the Christian era, the authenticity remains to be verified. But we can be quite sure that the other oldest emperor is Qianlong, who lived to be 89 years old, and his life basically ran through the entire 18th century. It can be said that an emperor who lives for a long time does not necessarily rule for a long time. Compared to the average lifespan of 38 years, the average length of rule is 12 years, accounting for almost 1/3 of their lives. The emperors who ruled for a short time are too numerous to list, but the emperors who ruled long are clear to us at a glance. Among them, Yuan Ying of the Northern Wei dynasty was less than 1 day in reign. Emperor Kangxi of the Qing dynasty ruled for 61 years and was the emperor with the longest rule in China. In order not to surpass him, his grandson Qianlong gave way after 60 years of ruling, and became the man behind the curtain for another 4 years after abdication. Now we talk about some deeper topics. We still count the sidelines of a grid as 100 years. The left side represents the lifespan and the right for the rule length. By drawing the pink average line of these two, we can see that there are quite a few emperors whose data are both below the average. In the middle and late periods of the feudal era, the ever-filling green symbolized the ever-increasing stability of rule. This implies the continuous concentration and strengthening of their imperial power. When it comes to ruling stability, we have to mention another concept, the maturity of governance. That is, the age of the emperor when he ascended. Unlike most over 50s leaders in the world today, the average age of ascending the throne for Chinese emperors is only 24 years old. If we use a small grid to represent an emperor, we can see their age distribution when they became the throne from the chart on the left. We can see 2 emperors ascending to the throne at birth. They are Liu Long and Yuan Ying we mentioned earlier. In addition, 2 emperors waited until they were 66 to show their talents. One was Wu Sangui, a self-claimed emperor against the Qing dynasty. The other one, you must not have thought. It is Wu Zetian. In addition, the political careers of 5 emperors have been interrupted. In other words, they have been on the throne twice. It is worth mentioning the last emperor, Pu Yi here. His second emperor dream seemed to be realized in the puppet Manchukuo in 1932. However, this period of history has exceeded Chinese feudal stage, and this regime is not accepted by Chinese. So his dream would always be just a dream. Going back to the chart on the left, we find that the average age of 24 is just a shallow appearance, and quite a few emperors have obviously come to the throne earlier. Among them, as many as 14 emperors began to rule the country when they were only 15 years old. Just imagine, what were you doing when you were 15 years old? There are ascended thrones, there are abdications, as well as there are deaths waiting for them after their retirement. In view of the different ages and lengths of rule of the Chinese emperors, on the left edge, their abdication ages are inevitably blooming everywhere. And on the right, we find that most emperors continuing to survive after their abdication point to the same number, 0. This reflects the characteristics of the hereditary system of Chinese feudal society. Because most emperors would pass the throne at the end of their lives, so there seems nothing abnormal with this chart at the first glance. But if we look at it from another angle, then we can understand it as most of the Chinese emperors died at different and random ages. In other words, the Chinese emperors might face a random risk of death at all times. It is an extremely scary question if we dive deep. Perhaps, at this moment, you have already got a bold conjecture in your mind. Then with your idea, let's finally explore the mystery of the death of these emperors. Maybe you guessed the answer. Yes, of the 345 emperors counted, 162 died of abnormal causes rather than common diseases. This ratio reached a staggering 47%. Among them, 14 died by suicide. Specific methods of death include hanging, sea jumping, self-immolation, hunger strike, and even asking others to kill themselves. If you are to ask which dynasty of emperors has the highest suicide rate, the answer is Ming. Among Ming's 20 emperors, 4 of them killed themselves, resulting in the suicide rate as high as 20%. In contrast to the social turmoil that had been fighting for years between kingdoms, there have now been a large number of emperors killed or wounded on the battlefield, only 11 people. Concerned in these two causes, the most famous figure is Gaozu Liu Bang, the founding father of the Han Empire. He was shot by an arrow during a war with Qin's remnants. This number shows that in order to protect themselves, the emperors will not go out easily. On the contrary, most of them died in direct assassinations by people around them. The number reached 97. These assassins included ministers, eunuchs, and even their wives, sons, and brothers. There are also 2 founding fathers in this group of people. One is Yang Jian, the Emperor Wendi of Sui dynasty. He endeavored to establish the unified Sui, ending the division of ancient China for more than 260 years. But in his later years, he was killed by his son, who succeeded him. Just like his fate, the Sui dynasty lasted only 37 years, becoming the second short-lived unified dynasty in Chinese history. The other case is Li Yuanhao, the founding father of Western Xia dynasty. One of his sons brutally cut off his nose while he was drunk, causing him to bleed to death. Under the lure of power, there are no fathers and sons, only profiteers and sacrificers. In addition, there is a secret method of assassination, that is poisoning. 24 emperors died in this insidious method. Similar to the medieval Europe, the main component of ancient Chinese poisons is arsenic,
but with different names. Besides, many poisoners use certain toxic herbs and woody plants, such as oleanders. According to legend, there's another terrible method, which is using toxic insects to torture people to death. Back to emperors. The most worth mentioning one is Li Yu. He is not only the last ruler of Thousand Tang Kingdom, but also one of the most famous poets in ancient China. Most of his poems are full of endless anxiety and sorrow. This also implied his miserable end.
Of course, there's another condition, that is some emperors will get poisoned by themselves. They believe in ancient Chinese alchemy, which contained a lot of sulfur and heavy metals. Over time, they poisoned themselves. This number came to 7 people.
When time came to the Ming and the Qing periods, the emperor's superstition of alchemy was accompanied by the climax of their feudal rule. In the Ming dynasty, 3 emperors died of taking elixir. Here, it is necessary to mention the Emperor Yongzheng of the Qing dynasty. He was sandwiched between 2 long-lived emperors, but he only lived to be 57 years old. Although this was above the average lifespan of Chinese emperors, it was relatively short given the prosperity of Qing. There's one saying that he died of poison murder. Another is that he was chronically poisoned by taking elixir. Therefore, his death has become one of the 4 historical mysteries of the Qing dynasty.
In addition, 6 emperors died on their beds due to excessive indulgence.
At this moment, you must be wondering how that emperor of the Song dynasty with 80 children died. But this answer may disappoint you. He died of assassination rather than overindulgence. Here, we need to talk about another emperor. It is Tongzhi of the Qing dynasty. He also didn't die of overindulgence. But like many other celebrities of his time in Europe, his life ended with syphilis. Therefore, he became the only emperor in Chinese history to catch a venereal disease. Except for indulgence,
3 people died in other accidents, including drunkenness and horse falling. In fact, some of the emperors who passed away normally also died of psychological problems, including depression, anxiety, fright, and excessive sadness. This number also came to 12. This bloody death encyclopedia might explain why the average lifespan of the Chinese emperor is only 38 years old.
From dynasties, names, nationalities, and birthplaces, to gender, spouses, and offsprings, and then to lifespan, ruin, and death causes. We explored these pieces of data, and unconsciously, we have quickly browsed 2,000 years of Chinese feudal history at a glance. There are still many stories waiting for us. But our journey is coming to an end. Now let's return to the starting point, that splendid starry sky belonging to the emperors.
When we look back at the portraits of the emperors, only one emperor left a lot of clear and real photos. He is Aixing Puyi, whose name we just repeatedly mentioned. He is not only the terminator of China's feudal dynasty, but also the accelerator of China's opening up of a new era. When we omit his uniform and enlarge his face, he is just like us. The emperors of China's feudal history are not only cold political machines, but also a group of ordinary people with joy, anger, and sorrow.